Good morning. This morning, I want to talk a little bit about words and the power of words and the importance of words. I was thinking many years ago, we met a couple in knocking on doors, or I can't remember exactly how we met them, but it's been so many years ago. But she was Spanish in her first language is Spanish, and spoke English fine, and his Spanish was very good, but his first language is English. And we got talking one day about how they met. He was across the border for his business, and just right across the border, some kind of a thing where he was into an office complex of some kind, and he walks in and sees this lady at the front desk, and she didn't speak any English, he didn't speak any Spanish, but he was interested, and he said the next week or whatever it was, a few days later, he did what he could do, left. He was going to come back and work on whatever it was he's working on in a few days, week or whatever. And by the time he came back, he learned how to say hi and what's your name in Spanish. And while he was gone, she had learned to say hello and what's your name or whatever else it was in English. And so he spoke to her in Spanish and she responded in English. And each time he came, he had learned more Spanish, and each time he came, she learned more English. Those words mattered. The words communicated. They communicated care. They communicated seriousness. They communicated interest. Words matter. I remember going to the first time I was preaching in Australia. Because they're an English-speaking country, you could naturally just think everything's the same. But the preacher that picked me up, he said, "Now I understand we speak English here." He said, "But let me explain. There's some words that Americans use that have different definitions here." And he named a word. He said, gave me a word. He said, "Now in America, that's a commonly used word, and that's a word that would be very innocent." He said, "In Australia, it means, and it has an obscene meaning, and it is a word you would use, I would use, no one would think anything of it. But in Australia, it's inappropriate." And I've found that in different countries, words matter, and definitions of words matter. There's a passage over in Nehemiah chapter 13. It's an interesting story. The people of God were in a battle with this other country, and they could speak the same language, but they had an accent. The enemy did, like us and people from Georgia or New England. And they were in this heated battle, and they got to where they were trying to catch the people that are getting away, and there was a bridge or whatever it was they had to cross. And so they got there, and they had to say this word, and so they couldn't pronounce the word right, and so they killed them. And that's not in Nehemiah, but that is in your one of your Old Testament stories during the battles of the kings and all. But words matter, and how you pronounce them matters. Well, in the story of Nehemiah chapter 13, again, without taking too much time, the people of God had gotten mixed up. They'd messed up. Of course, when Nebuchadnezzar had conquered Judah, he took lots and lots of people away. A lot of people died. A lot of people were carried away, and there were some left behind. But when he conquered a country, he would bring in people from other countries. So in our case, if they conquered Canada and America and Mexico, he would bring Mexicans, drop them in America, bring Americans, put them in Canada, and take Canadians, put them in Mexico, to mix up their national loyalties and to mix up their religious loyalties to try and make them easier to rule. He didn't care what country was what, but he didn't want a unified resistance. Division always weakens. And so what Nebuchadnezzar done is brought these non-Jewish people with another language, another culture, different music, different food, and brought them into the area around where Israel was. And Nehemiah discovered this problem in Nehemiah 13 and verse 23 and 24. "Now in those days I saw Jews that had married the wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab." So 3 different countries. People from these countries had come in, and their children had intermarried. And it says, "And their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them and cursed them and smote certain of them and plucked off their hair and made them swear by God, and on and on. These people, because they married someone who was from a different culture, different language, their children were picking up the other language, and they weren't Jews. They weren't, and the Jews, this Old Testament Jew, that was a very strict thing. It's not a New Testament law that you marry Norwegians if you're a Norwegian. Don't get thinking that. But in the Old Testament, the Jews were a unique people. They still are a unique people. And God did not want the Jew marrying the non-Jew. And there were times they ended up marrying because someone became a proselyte. They joined the Jewish religion. Rahab was such an example. Ruth came and married Boaz. And so there are those people. And they matter to God, but you got to be a Jew. And these people, the problem was a language problem. And I think it's interesting that we recently heard the discussion of Department of Defense or Department of War. And I think it's interesting that right after World War II, when we had won war after war after war, right after World War II, we changed the name of that Department of War to the Department of Defense. And Korea and Vietnam, Afghanistan, most of these wars, there were no decisive victories after that. It was a bunch of fighting, a bunch of loss of life, a bunch of crippled, good young people, but there was no decisive victory. But when you change the words have to do with a mentality. And there's a mentality that changed when they took the word war off and changed it to the Department of Defense. And I like that they're changing it back. The idea of make America great. And by the way, I think our leadership right now, I think they should, they would say, the French should say, let's make France great again. Let's make England great again. They're very much on national loyalty. And that's a biblical principle. There's no question about that. I've had pastors try to explain to me why they're taking the name Baptist off their church. And they'll say, now we're still Baptist, we still do everything the same, and then I want to say I don't, but I want to say, then leave the Baptist name on there. Are you or are you not a Baptist? It's none of my business. And recently a guy talked to me a little bit, and he said, I said, it's none of my business what you do. You do whatever you want. That's what independent means, the idea of a church being independent. But pulling that name off matters. The word marriage matters. The word love matters. Boy and girl. See, the devil wants to confuse and the devil wants to blur. And the idea that they don't know gender until the kid's older. No, you know the gender as soon as that ultrasound gives you the right picture, if they read it right. Long before that baby's born. We didn't with our kids. We wanted the surprise. But long before that baby's born, most couples know this is going to be a boy and this one's girl, whatever it might be. Because there's only those two. There's only boy or girl or something that's twisted and perverted. There is no other. But we've seen in the last few decades a lot of confusion and a lot of, and sometimes, if not always, in the name of tolerance. But you notice the people who want us to be tolerant of them, they are never tolerant of us. They're angry, and they're violent. The last couple of days, we've seen people try to redefine things that the scriptures hold dear. This book defines morals, right and wrong, family and nation. This book is the book. It is the book. And this culture around us has tried to redefine things that are in here. Words matter. They matter. My wife and I have not been together for 40 plus years. We have been married for 44 years. We got married in 1981. And we did not live together before that. We dated, we hung out, we were friends. And this thing of people saying, well, we're together. We've been together so many years. No, you've been in adultery that long, or you've been fornicating that long. But those are mean-sounding words. But see, words matter. It doesn't matter. You could follow the gangster crowd, and they'd have different vocabulary. You follow the fighter crowd, the people who are, the martial arts fighters or the cage fighters. Follow the the people who are surfers and skateboarders, and everybody's got their own lingo. And young people, they love bringing in their own language. Cool. What in the world is cool? And what does hot mean? And one of our boys many years ago, probably shouldn't even use this illustration, but how he got around it, but he wrote a note to a dad of a girl he's dating, and that she was really hot. And the dad did not take that as an appropriate term. I mean, their relationship was just about done right there. And the young man called me and said, "Preacher, I didn't know that it had other meaning. Hot is not." Anyway, we won't go there. But we think a car is hot because of its appearance or because of its speed or whatever. Hot is a temperature. Cool is a temperature. Fast is speed or slow. But language matters. I heard Dr. Howells told us, and in his experiences, he said you can tell the nation is declining when they have a disregard for their language, a disregard for their flag, and a disregard for their anthem. And we are seeing an uprising of old-fashioned belief in patriotism and words and family, and it's exciting. I love it. You think about it. You read the Bible, there's a difference between redeemed and justified and reconciled. There's a difference between sanctified and born again. Those words aren't even close. And words matter. God chooses these words because they mean something, and he wants us to know what those words mean. For me, in my circle, old-fashioned matters, Baptist matters, independent matters, fundamental matters. King James Bible believing matters. Those things matter to me. Those are words that matter. Proverbs 30 verse 5 says, "Add thou not to his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar." God doesn't want you messing with his words. When I was in Bible college, there were no tracts, gospel tracts. And I don't have them today because I don't have a sure pocket, but I have them in my New Testament. But this thing of these gospel tracts, now churches that say they're soul-winning churches, what they really are is once a month they go pass out flyers. Well, you know what? If the Apostle Paul had been in a church like that, there never would have been a church started. There was no Kinko's to go down and get your tracts printed in your new language. Paul went and preached, and he talked to people one-on-one, talked to them in groups. That's what we did in Bible college. There were tracts at First Baptist Church, but nobody had access to them unless you could go find them in the store and buy them. But we went out soul winning every single week. We had our New Testament. You know what we needed? We needed knuckles to knock on the door, a New Testament that's got the Word of God, and we needed the Holy Spirit to deal with people. We don't have to have gospel tracts, but many churches today, they're redefining. They're not a soul-winning church. They're a tract-passing out church. Now, I'm for tracts. I pass them out all the time, and I'm for that. But soul winning is soul winning. It's going out, talking to people, and getting people to put their faith in Jesus Christ. There is no question in anybody that knows me that I'm a man. You go to my half of the closet, there's nothing that even resembles anything in the other half of the closet. That's the girl's side. This is the man's side. And everything in my side is very distinctly man. There's nothing similar. There's nothing in my wife's side of the closet that appears to be woman. We are distinctly male and female. I'll open the door for a lady. I'll have the lady go first. Unless it's a place of potential danger, then I would go first. Going upstairs, or an escalator, I'd have the lady go first, because if she fell, she'd fall down, and I would want to be there to help her. If we're going down the escalator or the stairs, I would go first, because if she fell, she'd fall down, and I would want to be there to help her. That's a man's job. It is a man's duty that he would play the role of a man. And words matter. Words matter so much. And don't let people rob you of your words. When Abraham Lincoln scribbled that Gettysburg Address, as the story as I got it, there's a guy who spoke for a couple of hours, bored people to death. Nobody remembers who he is or what he said. But during that speech, or just before it, on a napkin, President Lincoln penned the Gettysburg Address. He stands up and speaks for 2.5 minutes, a message that has been memorized around the country. I know in our school, our young people memorized the Gettysburg Address. And in years gone by, young people did. Most kids in school memorized the Gettysburg Address. Write well-chosen words, well delivered, make an impact. Now, here at our church, I'm a pastor. There's only one pastor. I've got assistant pastors. I've got deacons. I don't have a board of elders. We don't have that. I'm the pastor. The word pastor is also synonymous with the word pastor, elder, and bishop. Those words all refer to the pastor. So we don't have a board of elders. We have deacons. Why? That's a biblical term. And everybody else is a church member. Our deacons are men because the New Testament says that the deacon must be the husband of one wife. Talks about the husband and his wife. We don't have deacons that are messed up in their sexual orientation. We don't have church. We love everybody. Anybody walks into our church, they are welcomed and we love them. But we're not selling out our morality and we're not selling out our vocabulary because we want to make some woke personality feel less offended. In most cases, these woke ideas, they're sinful ideas according to the Word of God. Now, let me just challenge you. Words matter. The other day, I don't know when it was, but just in the last week or so, I mentioned discipleship. It matters. Discipleship is a word. It's in the English language, but it's not in our Bible. And to disciple someone, it is not a verb like you train someone. Disciple is a noun describing a person who is disciplined, a disciple of Paul, a disciple of John, a disciple of Jesus. Discipleship, it would be a verb that I'm in a discipleship class at pretending that if I could accumulate enough facts, I would be a disciple. It's all nonsense. That's not Bible. That's not Bible at all. Now, it's not a sinful thing to have a discipleship class. I'm just telling you, words matter. And as I said recently, I don't believe discipleship classes and to be discipling someone. I don't believe that to be a Baptist term or to be a traditional Bible-believing term in soul-winning churches. I think that came from another angle, and I'm not the perfect historian, and I gave some guesses the other day. But let's just remember, words matter. Words matter. Words matter. Chevy or Ford, words matter. PC or Macintosh or Apple, the words matter. Let's just protect our vocabulary. And thank God for I met a man. I led him to Christ many years ago, and he and I got talking, and I said, "How long have you and your wife been married?" He said, "Well, we were together about however many years, long, like 30 years." He said, "When we started having grandchildren, we thought it was time we get married." They were together, then they got married. If you're living together and you're not married, then you're an adulterer, fornicator, depending on how you define the words. But you ain't married. Just because you move in together. You shack up one day doesn't make you married. Shack up 2 days. How many days do you sleep together before you're officially married? You're married when you get married. That's what married people do. Some silly thing. Some girl, "Oh, I can't believe it. I'm so excited. He asked me to move in with him. He just wants you to be a live-in whore." Uh-oh, that's going to offend some people. No, hold out, girls, until he's willing to put a ring on your finger and spend some money on you. Hold out until he's willing to make a commitment to you for life, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, forsaking all others, keep only unto you so long as you both shall live. That's marriage. And I'm not saying marriages don't break up. The Bible gives allowance for marriages to break up, but you still ought to get married. Words matter, and let's protect this thing. And when our president wants a Department of War, he's saying something. It matters.